Muted, muted.
We are back. I am back with Nate. We are back with nothing but Nets. We're going to get into a potential starting five that the Nets could use in their rebuild, in their youth movement. All guys 25 and under. Before we get into that, Nate, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Nate. I'm part of the, I guess, part of the Gary podcast at this point as
For
a
sure. For
basketball
sure.
aficionado.
Basketball
Even though we
aficionado.
found each other in the football community, but yeah, I'm definitely know basketball a lot a lot more or better than any other sport. Considering I grew up playing it. My dad is a lifelong coach, and I still live and play and do everything basketball to this day. So I'm always happy to be on talking Nets with you.
And basketball season is just way more entertaining than football season. Can we just be honest? I don't care how many people say I'm wrong. Basketball season is so much better than football season.
I know we're not on here to make that argument, but I kind of disagree. Like NBA regular season, it's not there's nothing worth it. Right now you and I can name the 16 teams going to be in the playoffs. So why are we playing the 82? Let's go. When in football, if we did that, we would get like 50 to 60% right. Every year it's
You
such a
probably you probably
volatile
get
sport.
no more than 2/3 of it because it does change every. Get no more than 2/3 of
Yeah,
it right, right? Like we guessed right now. Basketball, we probably get 15 of the 16. I would say.
yeah. Especially if we got the play in luxury, I'm definitely we'll get all 20 of them.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, I mean,
the other
at a
ones are all
certain point,
tanking.
there's only
The
yeah. The
rest
other
are trying
teams
to lose.
are old, right? And like a position, a team like Charlotte, can Charlotte tank and still make the play in? It's an interesting question, right? Like, I
It's
don't think
gonna
Charlotte's
get
that
that
bad
embarrassing.
anymore.
In the future, it's going to get that embarrassing when there's 7 or 8 teams trying to tank, and there's what 20 spots, including the play-in. So it's 32 teams. There's someone's got to make it. Just like we say,
So,
someone's got to get paid. It's
because you would think Atlanta's going to drop out and Chicago's going to drop out, right? Are they both going to tank? If that, like, now we're out of teams in the East. Like, some tanking team's going to make the play in. My guess is Charlotte because they're young and they still got something to play for. Possibly Toronto, but like I think you're going to get
yeah,
a
and they have
play
LaMelo. LaMelo's like a superstar if he plays.
if he
Well, if he
plays, right?
plays, if he
Yeah.
plays. Period. Him and
All
his
right.
brother.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on this. The Nets are obviously in the midst of a rebuild. I think the rebuild is going swimmingly. I think this is a really good start. Uh, I saw a graphic as this Keon Johnson just recently signed a 2-year deal. 1 year of that is guaranteed. Cam Thomas, Jalen Wilson, Noah Clowney, and Claxton. So you got two 22-year-olds, a 23-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 25-year-old in your starting five. Claxton would obviously be a veteran. A, look, we know the Nets are going to do a lot of losing, and the Nets aren't going to be very good. A, what do you think of that starting lineup? And B, is it realistic that they could use that at different parts of the season?
I think they can use him on the court. It's tough to put out there day one. Um, you need some type of veteran leadership. I would think so, especially if like in that lineup, Cam Thomas is going to be your point guard essentially, right? It's going to be the guy kind of making
Well,
decisions.
Keon Johnson is really, I mean, Keon Johnson's the size of a two guard, but in the summer league, he's been handling the point. He played point. Gilliard didn't play yesterday. They used the kid from Villanova, but Keon was basically running the point yesterday, which is,
Well, I guess
you
what
know,
I mean by that, once Keon brings it up the court and passes it to Cam Thomas, he's not getting the ball back for the
my
most
guess is
part.
that's going to be, if Gilliard played the point, he's not getting the ball back, right? Like that was kind of my thought
Sure.
on whoever
Yeah,
is technically the
I
point
guess
guard.
so.
Yeah.
I guess like we talked in the last podcast comparing them to the 2018 Nets team or
Yeah.
that 2017 that team that
Mm.
kind of all of a sudden had 40 wins and looking at the rosters, it's almost similar rosters. I think they added like Jared Dudley and maybe a Damari Carroll. They added a veteran piece here or there, but it was almost the same team that won 28, 30 games the year before that won 40 something. That's why when you asked me the wins question last year, I spoke to the continuity, and I think that's really why like we I think that's why they're keeping a Schroeder and a Bogdanovich as of right now. And just like they have a new coach, and that coach is not trying to tank. Like as much as us Nets fans, um, in big picture can see that a Cooper Flag is on the horizon or an Ace Bailey is on the horizon. That coach is not thinking in Cooper Flag mode at all. He's seeing the pieces and the assets he has, and he's looking to try to win games. So I think they're going to try to play like that 2018. And we've seen from the young guys and the athleticism and the scrappy players. I mean, people like to throw that term around all the time, but they really do have guys that can kind of get after it on defense. You in your last video alluded to the switchability that they have on defense, and they definitely have a lot of that outside basically the Cam Thomas and the Dennis Schroeder, the two like major outliers. So it's possible to see those 5 guys on the court. I don't know if a brand new rookie head coach is gonna wanna throw out 5 guys that average the age of 23, 24. I think he's gonna wanna have someone like a Schroeder at the head of the snake or a Bogdanovich who can get a shot off with 6 or 7 and like a good NBA shot off, and it's not gonna look messy and embarrassing and they're on the Sports Center not top 10 every day. That's not the goal of a rookie head coach.
It is. I mean, I guess a rookie head coach is the right path to go with such a young team. They're going to build it together. Like Kenny Atkinson was, around the game forever, but he was never an NBA head coach before. And I thought that worked out. Kyrie Irving disagreed, but I thought Kenny obviously did it.
Sure.
He was actually number one on my hit list of guys I wanted to hire. Hire anyone to coach this team. I want Kenny back. But you're right. This is Jordy's first job. He's not going to want to lose. I mean, the Nets are going to do a lot of losing regardless. Like we know that. But yeah, he's. I don't think Jordy Fernandez is going to be in all in tank mode saying, well, I'm just going to play these young guys as many minutes as possible. I think he's going to go in there. He's going to have his veterans. He's going to have, so then if not this, kind of looking at the Nets roster, you got Cam, you got Schroeder, you got Dorian Finney-Smith, and Bogdanovich. Who there starts, and then I mean, what do you do as far as we've also not mentioned Zaire Williams, who I actually want to see start. I want Zaire Williams in the start. I'm not sure where, but the 4 veterans I named, do they all start? Do some of them start? And then how do you mix in, the minutes for the guys that you do want to get minutes for without tanking? How do you juggle all those things?
I mean, specifically, we said this too, like in the NFL, they're tanking without tanking. So they're gonna lose games, not trying to lose games based on the roster they have. Even if you're just hoping well, we see this as fans. If they're losing close games with young players performing well, you feel a lot better. So that's kind of the goal of the Nets this year, at least from a fan's perspective. But to answer your question, the 2 veterans are the 2 guys I spoke to earlier, but are Dennis Schroeder and Bogdanovich. Schroeder is, I mean, he is what he is, but he's still one of the more effective playmaking guards in the league, especially in this type of role. Like, I'm not winning a championship type of point guard. I'm trying to get my young guys easier shots and get their confidence up. So Schroeder fills that role perfectly. I do think he would start day one. And for the reason I alluded earlier, not to sound repetitive, but I think Bogdanovich will be out there to be able to make tough shots against good NBA defenders late in the shot clock. It's Cam Thomas is not going to be able to score 40 every night, and when Cam Thomas is not doing, I mean, and Bogdanovich is a great 3 and D guy. I mean, more 3 guy if you need him to, who could really knock down the shot, but he can create a shot for himself. And that if you're looking down that starting 5 with a Keon Johnson and the Zaire Williams, and if it's going to be a Clowney, a Claxton, none of these guys you really want to see have the ball in their hands with Jeremy Grant guarding them with the shot clock ticking down to 5. So I think Bogdanovich and Schroeder start in the lineup, and like a guy like a Zaire and Keon Johnson, that's what training camp is for. That's what competition's for. That's what the coach is there for. And I think one of those guys will start next to Cam in that 3 hole possibly.
There's interesting because I don't really include Cam Johnson in my discussion because I don't think Cam Johnson is going to be here on opening day. I really don't. I think he's going to be gone relatively soon. There were rumors of moving him to San Antonio for Keldon Johnson. I don't know if you've seen that, but just off the top of your head, Cam Johnson for Keldon
I didn't see that.
Johnson. Who gets the better of that deal, or do both teams come ahead in that deal?
I would absolutely take that as a Nets fan. I guess I sound like a Cam Johnson hater, or your whole
You can
podcast does,
be.
to be
I am a
honest.
Cam Johnson hater. I hate it when they traded for him. I hate him now. So you can be a Cam Johnson hater on this
All right, so I'll
podcast.
speak for the Nothing But Nets that we're not a big fan of Cam Johnson. I'm a big fan. Keldon Johnson was on my daily fantasy squad, so I have a special place in my heart for Keldon Johnson. The guy, he can do, like, we spoke about this with I forgot who we spoke about last time, but he can do a little bit of everything. Cam Johnson can't do a little bit of everything. It's if Keldon Johnson had 10 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on a certain night, and he's also just a guy that can finish a little bit, a guy that can rebound a little bit better, a guy that can play that big body basketball and fill that off the ball presence and that power forward small that wing player presence better than Cam Johnson, who really, if he's not knocking down his three ball, you don't want to see him on the court, and you definitely don't want to see him with the contract he's making. It's not sitting right with Nets fans in his short time. It was fun while he was best friends with Mikal Bridges, but now that Mikal is gone, he doesn't have his best friend. He's making too much money, and he's not doing enough for the team. Let those young athletic guys play, and that's what they're doing. They're tanking by not tanking. Let them play. Let them play. I agree. Hopefully they find a way to get Cam out of here. I'd be excited if it was for Keldon Johnson, another body, another wing, another versatile piece that can compete in camp and compete for playing time.
Additionally, well, my other question would be, I understand why the Nets would make this trade, and the contracts are basically identical. I think Cam's is a few million more, but the contracts match, right? I think Cam is 4 for 25, and Keldon's 4 for 20, 20 over 20 million per year for 4 years. I think it's like 80 million, 79 million over 4 years. What would San Antonio, Popovich, that team, how would Cam Johnson fit in with Wemby and what they're looking to do in San Antonio? Because I don't really think he fits in anything. Like I don't want Cam Johnson. End of sentence. But like, if you don't dislike Cam Johnson as much as I do, what does he do? How does he help San Antonio? Why would San Antonio be interested in that trade?
I can't really tell you. I mean, I'm looking at Keldon Johnson right now, and this is a guy who last year scored 22 points a game. He took a rollback. Well, obviously, Wemby was on the team this year, so his attempts went from 17 and a half to 12 and a half. That's
Yeah.
my only thought is similar to um why am I blanking on names here? Who we did Diakite in the trade for Zaire Williams. Is it just that Popovich is I don't have a role for this guy. Let's do right by him. That's the only answer because Cam Johnson is he can do one thing for you, and maybe that's what fits what they want to do there. Maybe they just want a guy who's going to play defense, and when he's open, shoot the ball. Otherwise, don't. Keldon Johnson's not really that guy. He's going to maybe slow the basketball down, slow the game down a little bit more. So that's my own thought is he doesn't fit in the rotation. But I would obviously want Keldon Johnson if you like you said they're comparative contracts. I would much rather prefer Keldon Johnson on my team than a guy that really can't do much off the dribble, can't rebound, can't do anything. This guy Kelton, he's a 22 a game scorer last year that could rebound the ball, 6 rebounds, 3 assists a game. Like again, on a bad team. I'm not saying he could do that on a playoff team, but I'll take a young guy that can do a little bit of everything over a kind of a weak 3-4 that's really only a catch and shoot guy at this point in his career.
You want to hear? I know Keldon Johnson pretty well. I have an interest in a fighter in San Antonio named Dave Cardenas, who's like his best friend in San Antonio.
Hmm.
That great Kentucky team he was on. Um, who do you think he said was the best player on that team by far?
You'd have to remind me of that roster.
It was PJ Washington. It was Keldon Johnson. Let me see if I can get
Oh
the.
yeah, I remember that team.
But I mean, it was absolutely low. He was only there 1 year, I think. Right? He was only at Kentucky for 1 year. Yeah. Let me see if I can pull up the roster for you real quick.
Tyler Hero was on that team. Emmanuel
Tyler
Quickley was
Hero
on
was
that
on the team.
team. PJ Washington was on that team. Keldon Johnson. Yeah, there's a lot of guys on that team. I guess and then now it's Ashton Hagen. So that was the year after um Maxi left, right?
Yeah, Yeah, Maxi would have been
Probably
gone by
probably the
then.
year the
Yes.
year after Maxi, and then it was I mean, he could have been third or fourth. I have affinity for PJ Washington as a New York guy, and I know PJ spent some time in Dallas too, but he's originally um from the city.
Yeah.
He could be third. He really could be on that current team you're saying at the time.
But yeah, I asked him who was the best player on that
It's
team.
probably
Who do you think
quickly Hero and then
he said
Keldon
quickly
Johnson
by
third.
far was the best player. And quickly came off the bench, I think, on that team, right?
Did he really? I'd be
I
shocked.
think so. He said quickly,
I
yeah,
thought he
quickly
won.
he said
I
was the
thought
best player
quickly
on the
won
team by
six
far.
man of the year when Maxi was there. I know he and Maxi obviously it was hard to compete for time and points in the basketball, but I'd be shocked if the year after that quickly didn't start.
But quickly was a
Nick
freshman
Richards
that
was
year.
also on that
Yeah.
team. he started 20 games that year quickly.
Okay, he did. So that's
So
most of
I
the
think it was the
season.
first year that he probably
Yeah.
won like a six man award or something. But yeah, some games he came off the bench. 10 of them he did. But yeah, I'm probably going third on that team now looking at the roster. It's probably quickly and Tyler Hero was obviously a stud his 1 year in college and
Yeah,
then continued it to the
it's
league.
it's a heck of a team. So we're deep into the summer now. It's the end of July. How did the summer go for the Nets? The summer league. The players you wanted to see: Jalen Wilson, Noah Clowney, Keon Johnson. How do you think they're performing? And basically, if you had to kind of give a grade on summer league and the summer so far, how would you grade what the Nets have done so far this summer?
I don't like giving specific grades, but you got what you wanted to see. Like I think I messaged you at one point where Noah Clowney in the first half was 4 or 6 from three and was shooting the ball extremely confident with guys closing out on him, knocking down shots. So you definitely like seeing that. You love seeing the aggressiveness from Jalen Wilson. I think we talked about this in the live podcast. I'd rather see Jalen Wilson out there every minute rather than Cam Johnson. Give all his minutes to Jalen Wilson at this point. He can play off the dribble. He can shoot the three probably just as well as Cam Johnson on any given night. He can defend probably just as well as Cam, and he plays with some physicality. He plays basketball. He's not a literally typical 3 and D that Cam Johnson is. And then the Nets and Keon Johnson can celebrate a multi-year contract. So he's been playing well enough to show them that he can play in the NBA and he can play on their you know tanking while trying to win type of team. He's not going to be a star player, but they're seeing what they want to see, and yeah, you got to be excited for those three guys. And I like all three of their bigs. I like Clowney. Obviously, I love Claxton and I love Dayron Sharp. So I think they're all going to be. It's nice to have three good young rotational pieces that you can look forward to taking that next step.
Dayron Sharp is the guy that I think is going to be the odd man out here. I just don't see a ton of minutes for him. We'll see what Jordy Fernandez's rotation looks like, but he's the guy that I think they should either play him or trade him because they can get value for him. And the more you just sit him on the bench, the more he's going to lose value. There are people who think highly of him. If you can move him, I don't know what you're going
I
to get
disagree.
for
I,
him.
I like him a lot. I like
I
him a
like him
lot,
a
and I
lot
think there
too.
is a role for him. I think there is you can't just there's matchups like the Philadelphia 76ers. Like you're looking to be a playoff team, and Beat's going to be here for the next 7, 8 years. Like Claxton's going to get in foul trouble at time. You're going to need a Dayron Sharp who gets probably their best rebounder, their best offensive rebounder on the team. A guy who even just height and weight, like he's 6'11", 265. A guy who could bang bodies with the big Miles Turners and the Embiids and the whoever else I'm missing in the East, the Horfords, if we still want to consider him. But sometimes you need a big body out there, especially in the playoffs, and especially with a guy like Claxton who can be rotated. If Clowney can knock down the 3 point, like he could turn into a stretch four, right? We think Clowney's a very versatile piece too. If he could be a Claxton type piece, but that can stretch you into the corner and kind of sit corner for you at times and knock down that corner three, then I think there's even more of an argument to keep Dayron Sharp as Claxton's backup. If Clowney can fit into that off the ball role and really knock down a shot. I think Clowney's development and his perimeter shot changes everything for being able to keep those three centers. If Clowney's just a center, I think you're right. There's probably not enough room for all of them.
Yeah, there's not really a situation where I can see putting Sharp and Claxton on the court together for a prolonged period of time. And they've committed to Claxton, right? So then the Sharp just become Claxton's backup. Is he just become a which if that's what it is, that's what it is. But I think he's more. My point is, I think he's more valuable than that, right? So if you're only going to play
Right,
him,
but we saw you always need two centers, and we saw with the
that's true.
Knicks last like when Hartenstein was on the Knicks. I remember when people signed him, people said, "Oh, we got a backup Clippers. Oh, let me see his 3 point percentage. Oh, he can stretch the floor because he took 5 threes in his life." So you never know what a guy could become. And if I told you in 4 years, Claxton is kind of priced out or maybe an injury, you know what I'm saying, or maybe he's lost that athleticism, and Sharp is a Hartenstein type. He has a passing ability we haven't seen, or something in his game that without the playing time we haven't seen. I think there's roles for having two centers, and Sharp is under player control, and he's gonna have opportunity to have minutes this year. Like we're both Jets fans. You never want to speak about injuries, but you never know what's gonna happen if God forbid someone has a collapse. You have a plug and play center, not again for your tankathon team. You've got a plug and play center, a young guy who can rebound, who could defend, and like everyone else, he gets 6 fouls. So we always like having a body out there.
I wanted to switch back to one of the things. I had one more thought on Cam Johnson I forgot to bring up, right? I mean, Marks obviously assesses Cam Johnson differently than you and I do, right? Like he was a big. I don't know what you thought of him prior to the trade, but I thought nothing of him. I thought he was a dime a dozen type of 3 and D guy minus the D. Um, but Marks obviously values him to some degree much more than we do. Um, Does he have a role here? And like realistically, do you think Marks is gonna, like Marks made him a big part of the deal, and then he gave him a big contract? Can Marks move him at this point? And if so, what kind of value do you think you can realistically get in return? Like how does the rest of the league gonna look at him? Is it more like we look at him, or more like Marks looks at him?
No, unfortunately, I think it's more like how we look at him, especially the more time that he's playing on a losing team and a losing franchise. I've spoken about this with you. Like we all agree he probably only got that money because he was on a finals team in Phoenix and because he was on a winning team. But I completely agree with you. I think he is a dime a dozen guy, and I've always seen him as that. But when you end up on a team with Chris Paul and Devin Booker and at the right time, and you play your cards right as he did, and he knocked down shots and in the playoffs, and he had a big spot in the rotation, and he got drafted to a team that needed a contract like that, needed a young guy, and he had length and could shoot the three and enough athleticism to, he's not like a 3 and D guy. You just alluded that without the D. But in the regular season against the Pistons, he is a 3 and D guy. In the regular season against the Raptors, he is a 3 and D guy. So he can blend in the regular season as lots of guys do. And then come playoff time, but he gets the benefit of being on that finals team in his first 4 years in the league. And I think the Nets also there's some like affinity to when he was here with Mikal Bridges. Like him and Mikal were kind of the promotional piece. If you go on Instagram every day on the Nets, it was what are the two friends doing today? And so he was a big part of that promotional. So I think it was that little buddy buddy contract similar to I think RJ Barrett doesn't get the contract he gets from the Knicks from another franchise, but because he was drafted by the Knicks and everyone had his jersey and people liked him, and it was just like, well, he's a 20 point a game scorer, just as Cam Johnson. For Sean Marks, as much as he's good at scouting those guys and picking them up, I would love Cam Johnson if he drafted him. Not if he gave him the contract, because Marks is good at finding those guys who are long and a good defender and good potential and good 3 point shot. I would love if the Nets drafted him. I hate that they gave him that contract, and obviously I think it's a tough look on Marks, and hopefully he's able to rid his wrongs here and make it right.
He came in from Phoenix, and he had the reputation of being a good defender. And then I watched him like, well, he can't guard wings and he can't guard fours. I don't. I just never got it as him as an elite or top notch defender. I don't. I never saw that at any stage that he's been here. Like getting to watch him every day as a net fan, it's like, what are they talking about? He's not. And then he's
You know
Salka
what? It
Sharman.
probably always helps that he's playing next to Mikal Bridges his whole
Yeah,
career, where where Mikal's like, I got him. You go get. You know what I'm saying? He never had to be out there and guard the best guy on the court if you're always playing next to Mikal Bridges, which it seems like they were like this since they got into the league on the court together.
yeah. If you're playing the Knicks, right, and Cam's your four, can he body Julius Randle?
No, but he can't guard Jalen Brunson either.
Right, that's what I'm saying. He can't go. He can't go. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I was gonna go. Yeah, he becomes a liability. I don't want to beat up on Cam Johnson too much. I think of him when I think of him. Right, I think of him the same way I think of Joe Douglas. If if you know what that is, I don't see any value in him. He seems like a nice guy. He seems like a great dude. I wish him the best. I just hope he's off this roster sooner rather than later. The last question I wanted to ask you was I'm going to let you put your Jordy Fernandez hat on. If you're rolling it, this is the roster, and you can do what you want with Ben Simmons, but this is your roster. Game one, opening night. What's your starting five, and then who are your rotational pieces? Who are you still trying to play, 15 minutes or more per game?
Ben Simmons. I mean, you threw the Ben Simmons ring in
I'm
it.
not playing.
He's
I'm just
just a toss up.
he's there, right? Like to me, he's there, and I'm just not counting on him, right? Like if he plays, great. If not, I'm not starting him for sure. Like there's no chance I'm starting him. I just can't run my offense and defense assuming he's going to play. So if he plays, he's going to play a minimal. And if I'm the head coach, but I'm gonna let you field the question.
Oh man, it's really tough, Gary, because I want to have Schroeder out there, but obviously if you don't start Cam Thomas, there's gonna be probably problems with his agent, and he's gonna be very upset. It's essentially like the Cam Thomas show. This is gonna be this year.
Yeah,
So to not have Cam Thomas in the starting lineup, it's tough for me to do. And to put him also next to Dennis Schroeder would be a really tough defensive look uh, for
that
the
was my
Nets.
concern with starting Schroeder. But I mean, look, go ahead. I'll let you answer the question. I'll give my thoughts. I've cut you up like 3 times now. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let me start backwards. I think Bogdan's going to be out there. Um, Claxton's going to be out there. This is where it gets tough. I think Zaire Williams will find his way into the starting lineup as the four. I think he brings a lot on like defensive versatility. Um, and they're hoping that he can knock down his shot to start the season. Like I would love to see Zaire Williams playing with confidence. We talked about that on the Zaire Williams podcast. If I could see one guy and just like inject confidence into him, it would be Zaire Williams. You know what I'm saying? If I would love to see him playing with confidence and being able to knock his shot down. So I would put Zaire Williams at the four, Claxton at the five, Bogdanovich at the three, and then here's where we get really sticky with the backcourt. And I think we talked about this last time. The over under for point guards to me is 5.5 for the season, and I
Yeah,
think the over under for probably the overall backcourt starters could be like 14.5.
it's
Like
gonna be a lot. Yeah.
combinations of
I, how
of,
many
of
possible permutations are there? Yeah, I
having
mean, there's gonna be a
possible
lot.
combinations is going to be unbelievable. Like I think everyone from obviously I think Ben Simmons is going to start. I think Schroeder's going to start. I think Cam Thomas is going to start. I think Shake Milton is even going to start. Um, But let me throw a wrench into you, as I'll just alluded to him, and we can always look back at this podcast and say I was wrong. My starting backcourt opening night will be Shake Milton and Cam Thomas.
Okay,
With Shake
I don't
Milton
mind that. Yeah,
providing that defense again, another guy that they hope can be in the rotation, and a guy that can, again, with Cam Thomas, you need a guy out there that can defend, and Shake Milton's first guy to have his hand up. You know, that's what he gets paid to do. Um, and like you said, I'm like hopefully Ben Simmons was injected with something else that he just loves basketball, and he wants that contract, and he comes into training camp as like as a leader. Like imagine Ben Simmons was blossom into the player that we all thought he was, and was like a leader and a playmaker. Like he would be so perfect for this team right now. But like I said, it's all in our dreams as a Nets fan. So I'll throw a wrench. I'll throw a wrench in there and go with Shake Milton, Cam Thomas, Bogdan as a little veteran leadership, and then Zaire Williams and Claxton as a very athletic and as you like to use the term, the switchability with the 4 and 5 there.
then who are your rotations? Who are the 4 other guys who you can see getting 15 minutes or more per game? I mean, obviously, yeah. Oh, I'll answer the question. Are you gonna?
Schroeder's obviously, I guess, will lead the head of the snake for the second unit. Jalen Wilson should get all of Cam Johnson's minutes. I've talked about that before. Um, Clowney and Sharp are both going to be there. That's a 9-man rotation already.
Yeah.
And hopefully Clowney, like I said, develops that 3-point shot, and he's really that versatile 4 or 5 piece that can, in this theory, come in and play for Zaire after that. Um, and then that 10th man is going to be everyone from Ben Simmons if he feels like playing that night and his back isn't sore, to a Trenton Wofford, to a Keon Johnson, to a it's that I think 10th piece based on injuries and based on what's the term they use in the NBA to take days off now? Their rest
Load
days.
management.
So they're based on their load management days. Obviously, DFS will be in there, Dorian Finney-Smith, but he might be a piece that could be moved to him and Cam. I could see kind of incentivizing a playoff team if you could somehow work those two contracts in a team. If you take DFS, we'll throw in a Cam or vice versa. Um, but yeah, so that 10th spot, it could totally be up in the air, but obviously Clowney's got to be in there. Sharp's got to be in there. Schroeder, I think, will help a group like that off the bench. If he's not starting, I would definitely separate Schroeder and Cam as much as I could.
I wanted to run one trade by you, right? Because we did bring
Yeah,
up Dorian Finney-Smith, and it's something, and I just wanted your thoughts on it. Cam Johnson and DFS to the Lakers for D'Angelo and Dalton Connect. What would be your thoughts on that trade?
Gary. We're obviously I'm not a Lakers fan, but there's no way any Lakers fan could say yes to that.
Really? Okay.
I
I
don't
mean, they
think so.
don't.
I mean, it's
D'Lo.
a first round draft pick.
Okay.
I mean, and they like Connect. I liked Connect coming out. People thought he was gonna be a top 10 pick. Some of them like he's a solid enough scorer that would definitely play for the Nets right now. And then D'Lo would bring back all the nostalgia for Nets fans, and yeah, and then get rid of Schroeder. Sure, he would plug in for Schroeder right
Well,
there. I mean,
my
they both have similar roles. They're similar players anyway.
yeah, so both guys come off the books this year. My guess would be like if you could trade both of them, trade both of them. But like you'd be able to trade D'Lo for a first round pick, so then you could turn
Well,
DFS. In essence, you could turn DFS into Cam Johnson into 2 first rounds, where you're getting Connect, who is in essence a first round pick because he hasn't played yet, and then trade D'Lo for a first round pick. You're bringing in 2. You know what I'm saying? Like that would be
yeah,
ideal. You're
no,
saying,
it's a more
yeah,
nuanced trade than I thought. You're right because like we talked about this. Guys like DFS, you end up looking at your tweet alert and seeing that they went for like 3 first rounders and or 2 for, and you're just like, what the he's that valuable at the trade deadline. Like someone wants it, but teams do. So yeah, if the Lakers are, if D'Lo's obviously not working out of the rotation, and they need a 3, like DFS is going to be valuable at the trade deadline. If he's there that much longer. I don't know if you were talking about preseason, but yeah,
no,
connects a
I was
first round pick.
assuming.
So
Yeah.
in that case, the maths it adds up in terms of a first round pick and a Cam Johnson or throwing in a Cam Johnson for a guy like DFS.
That was my last thought. Now, just to answer the question, if I could create the starting lineup, I would start Schroeder and Cam Thomas, and then I would go big in the backcourt. I would start Zaire, Clowney, and Claxton. Those guards are going to get beat, but then I got length and rim protection in my front court. So I understand that that's going to be a disaster defensively, but hopefully, my big guys can stop, meet him at the rim.
We'll see.
But
and I can agree. There could be over 60 starting lineups this year.
You
So
got guys
we're
like
probably both right.
Keon Johnson, Wofford, who may start or who may be completely out of the rotation. I don't know how that's going to work. Like I can come up with a rotation where both Johnson and Wofford start, or they can be completely out of the rotation. So they got a lot of options. They're going to have a lot of different looks this year. I
100%.
appreciate you. I appreciate your time, Nate. Looking forward to doing. Oh,
Always
I
a
want to
pleasure,
have
Gary.
you on next week, and I want to look at the top 3 picks in the draft. Ace, Cooper Flag, and Harper. If there's anyone else that we should know about, I want to have you on to talk about what would work for the Nets.
Yeah, look into it. I'll see if I can get one of my Rutgers guys, if I can get some inside information on how they're looking.
Appreciate
Be
it.
interesting. I'm
Appreciate it.
definitely looking forward to that. All right,
Yeah,
Gary. Always a pleasure.
I want to go to some Rutgers games this year and scout potential Nets because they got 2 guys who could potentially go to the Nets next year.
Yeah.
All right, Nate. I appreciate your time, Tim. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Gary. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Always.